Welcome to the Arboretum in the State Botanic Garden of Kentucky. I'm Jesse Dahl. Today we're going to talk about hydrangeas for the bluegrass. I'm the senior horticulturist here at the Arboretum and have been for the last 10 years. And I've been growing hydrangeas for quite a long time. And a little disclaimer before I start the video, I'm not an expert. I haven't bred or trialed out hundreds of different cultivars, but I have been growing hydrangeas for a long time, and I've been trying to grow them successfully here at the Arboretum. So we're going to talk about those that we've been able to have success with here at the Arboretum, and ones that you should be able to have success with in your own homes and gardens. We are going to talk about 6 different species of hydrangeas that can be grown here in the bluegrass. We're going to talk about the smooth, the panicle, the big leaf, the mountain, and the oak leaf hydrangea. So we're going to start off here with the climbing hydrangea. They usually bloom in May and June, so we don't have a lot of flowers. They would look white like this one is here, but they have these nice glossy green leaves, as you can see, and an added bonus is they have this exfoliating bark. This one got hit a little bit with our cold snap, and so that's why it's got some pruning work that needs to be done. But they are a tough hydrangea and the only climbing hydrangea that you can grow, and they are a really stately, one of the more stately vines that you can grow. They're not super aggressive, but they can climb whatever you have for them to climb up. This one here is growing up a stone wall. We've added chicken wire to help it attach better, but I've seen them growing up trees, growing up fences, so they can grow up pretty well whatever structure you have. They are kind of heavy, so you're going to want a heavier structure, and they grow well in full sun to part shade. And like I said, they're not super aggressive like a wisteria or trumpet vine where they're going to spread all over your whole garden and take over, but they will climb up whatever you have for them to climb up. But they're one of those really interesting plants and interesting hydrangeas that we can grow, and we can grow real well and do well in a lot of areas that we have. They need a moist soil, a rich moist soil to do their best. But they're one of the cool hydrangeas we can grow. Here we are with the smooth hydrangea, or Hydrangea arborescens, and this is one of our native hydrangeas. This one you can find in the woods here around the bluegrass, and in its native habitat you'll usually find it in woody areas next to streams, even entrances to the cave like Mammoth Cave. I've seen several in the entrances. And in the woods, in its native habitat, it's kind of a leggy, sprawly kind of thing that nobody's thinks much about, and most people just walk right past it. But once you take it out of that and put it into the garden section, or into the garden, it really fills out and becomes a nice compact plant. You can see here these are just about kind of done blooming, but they're kind of right now are green, but they start off with white with little fake flowers around the edge that are a darker white, and they'll turn to green once they get further along. But it's a nice plant. Most people, when they think of smooth hydrangea, they think of Annabelle. Annabelle, since 1960, has been the go-to for the smooth hydrangea. And when you see these giant mop head flowers, you can understand why. It was actually found by a lady in 1910 as she was going through the woods and riding her horse and saw it. She later returned with her sister, dug up some, took it home, and for years tried to find someone in the nurseries to buy it and to start spreading it around, but they all declined. And for years she gave a few starts to her neighbors, until finally in 1964 one of the professors at the University of Illinois saw it and released it to the trade. And now almost anywhere you go in the southeastern United States, you'll see Annabelle everywhere. And it's been a big improvement on the smooth hydrangea. You can see these giant mop head flowers. They, in June, just totally cover the plant. And because it's a native, it's pretty easy for us to grow. There's not a lot of problems. You can see the leaves look all nice. And with pruning is also pretty easy for it. There's a couple ways you can prune it. You can just take out the dead canes, which is what we do on this one. Any of the old canes at the end of the year in the wintertime, we'll remove those. Or for those that don't want to take that much time or effort, you can actually cut all of this down to 6 inches, and it will regrow and bloom the next year just like nothing ever happened. So it's one of those really easy to care for plants. And today, if these great balls of white aren't your thing, they've come up with new colors. They have released some that are red and pink. And a lot of the newer cultivars, some of them aren't as big as these. They have some that are this size, but also have some small ones like this Invincible Ruby Smooth Hydrangea, which is, it's red, but it's on a smaller plant, a smaller flower as well. So there's a lot of new options today for us to try out. Okay, we're now on to the big leaf hydrangea, or Hydrangea macrophylla. And if you go into a nursery this time of year and looking for a shrub, if you're not careful, you'll come back with one of these. And when you look at the flowers, it's no surprise. They can come in yellow, in pinks, blues, purples, reds, whites, and a lot of times even a mix of those different colors. The color that you'll get is decided somewhat by the plant, but also can vary by your soil. You may have one that's blue and your neighbor may have a pink one. It may be the same type of plant. That's because the color depends upon the amount of aluminum in your soil and the free aluminum in your soil, and that varies on your pH. So if you have a higher pH, you're going to get more pinks, and if you have a lower, it'll be more blues. So with that, they are, like I said, they're beautiful plants. They grow well for us here in the Bluegrass. Our one caveat that we have with these plants is they don't really bloom well. They grow well, but they don't really bloom well. The reason being is most hydrangeas, most of the big leaf hydrangeas bloom on old wood. That means wood that was established, the branches that were done last year. Now these, most years for us here in the Bluegrass anyway, they die down almost to the ground, or die down, depending on how cold we get, will vary how much die down we have. But most years they die down to about maybe 6 inches to a foot tall. And so we lose all that wood that the flowers would have came on. There are varieties now called remotin varieties that will bloom on new wood. So if you're wanting to plant one of these and if you want to get a lot of flowers, you're going to want to find one of those with remotin flowering. One of those is Endless Summer, is an old one. There are several new ones. With these, there's also a lot of varieties that were developed for the florist trade. There's the City Line series where you got Rio and Paris and all sorts, and the flowers are beautiful, but they don't really perform well for us because they were more meant for the flower trade, for cut flowers, or to give a pot to someone you love. And for those, they're beautiful, but you put them in our garden and they don't really perform very well. They die down a lot, and with that, there's a lot of pruning that has to be done. Every winter we have to, or every late spring, we actually have to prune off all that dead that happens. And you never know how much you're going to get. If we get a really mild winter, it may be just a couple inches. If we get a really cold winter, we may be pruning them almost to the ground. For most people, they ask me, when is the right time to prune them? We wait until the buds, you'll see green buds on the stems in the spring. Once those start coming out a little bit, then I know how far down I have to prune them. So that's when we prune ours. So that is probably their biggest problem, is the dieback. And even those that are remotin, I wouldn't say we get a super great bloom out of them compared to some of our other hydrangeas, but the plants themselves grow really well for us. These ones are planted about 5 years ago. They prefer full sun to part shade, a rich, moist soil. Hydrangeas are one of the indicator plants that can tell you if you need water in your garden. If it starts getting dry at all, these leaves will wilt up. If you water it that evening, or even once it cools down, those leaves will perk back up and it'll look like nothing happened. But they're one of the plants that can tell you if you need to water, or although sometimes when it's really hot and dry, they will look wilted even though they have enough water, they just can't keep up. But once it cools back down, they'll perk right back up. All right, that brings us to the panicle hydrangea, Hydrangea paniculata. It is a native to Japan and China, and it is one of the hardiest, easiest to grow hydrangeas that we can grow, but it's also one of the loudest in your face in the middle of July and August and this time of year. Most of all of them that I've seen are in this white, creamy colored. There are a few that they're breeding now that as these bracts age, they turn a pink to a reddish color. So they're adding a little bit more color to it, but most of them all start off, or all the ones I've seen start off this white creamy color. It is, like I said, really easy to grow. It was developed by a breeder in the Netherlands in 1986. And if you go anywhere in America almost, and to any shopping center or in July, August, that big white bush is probably a limelight hydrangea. They're really common. millions of them planted across the U.S. But there's a reason for that. They're easy to grow. They take almost no pruning. There's no bug damage, insect damage. So you can plant them on really poor soils. In their best, they would prefer a rich, moist soil and full sun to part shade. But they have they're pretty variable in what they can take. About the only things they can't take is full shade and really, really wet soils. But anywhere else, a dry soil, a bad site, they will handle that just great. So they're doing some more work on breeding, on shortening some of these. Limelight is originally 8, sometimes 10 foot tall. I've seen some of the tallest, but usually somewhere around 8 foot tall. A lot of the newer cultivars are trying to get the dwarfs. Most of those have topped out around 3. Maybe with some more work, they'll get some that are around 1 or 2, but most of those tend to be about 3 foot tall. All right, that brings us to the oak leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea quercifolia. It is one of those plants hydrangeas that's native to the southeastern United States. Its native range doesn't make it quite up into Kentucky, but it comes pretty close. But it does grow well here. I've seen it up into Illinois, into most of the Midwest, and it is an easy to grow plant. It's got these cool leaves. They're a little bit different than the rest of the hydrangeas. That's why they call it the oak leaf hydrangea. It has these white flowers in May to June. As they age, they turn this pinkish color. You can kind of see the white still on the bottom, but they'll turn a pinkish color and then eventually to brown. Those hang on clear into the wintertime. As the leaves fall off, you'll notice there's kind of coppery exfoliating bark. So it's one of those perfect 4-season plants that you can find that has interest all year round. There are quite a few different cultivars of this. They've bred some that are a lot shorter than this. This is just a straight species, so you can see how tall they can get. They will spread underground by rhizomes, and so over time they can spread larger and larger and take up a large space. But they're not super weedy, so that means they're not really aggressive. They're not going to push a lot. It's pretty easy just to pull out the few extras you don't want and pass those on to a neighbor or something. But they've also bred for the flower petals. They've bred some with a lot more flower petals than this one. They've also got different leaf colors. This is a little honey, and it has got yellow leaves on it that stay yellow throughout the summertime. This one, I've noticed, it needs some shade. If it's in full sun, it gets sunburned some. But these are easy to grow shrubs, moist, but a little harder to grow they need a little bit better climate than the Paniculata hydrangea. They need moist, rich soils but given those soils, they will really grow and perform well for you with very few problems and almost no pruning as well. Okay, our last hydrangea is one of the least common here in the bluegrass. And so we're not going to dwell on it too much, but I wanted to let you know about it. It's when you see one in its glory in another state or on the West Coast, East Coast, or in Japan where it's native to in China, they are beautiful. If you look at them in the magazines and the catalogs, they are a beautiful plant. They're just hard for us to grow. That last plant, the last hydrangea, is the mountain hydrangea, Hydrangea serrata. You can find these still around in some of the nurseries around here in Lexington and in the bluegrass. I have planted several here at the Arboretum over the years, not been successful on any of those that I've planted. I have seen them around Lexington. I've seen them in Woodford County as well. So you can grow them here, but to grow them successfully, you're gonna have to have the right climate, somewhere protected, kind of a part shade, real rich soils, moist as well, because it's native to kind of the mountain regions in Japan and China. So it's used to kind of those really sheltered areas. They, when you see them in full bloom, they're beautiful. They have these lace cap flowers. There's two different types of flowers. There's lace cap and then the mop heads. If you remember Annabelle or the other flowers you looked at, most of those are mop heads. They have a giant ball of flowers. Lace caps are all on one level with a few little flowers on the outside, those little bracts around the outside edge. Almost all of the mountain hydrangeas that I know of are lace caps. They can come in pink, purple, blue, white. So they're pretty fantastic to look at, but just really hard for us to grow. To maintain those, you're going to maintain them kind of the same way as you do the big leaf hydrangea, and that's what this is here. They're going to die down just like these do to the ground, and so are close to the ground. So you're going to want to prune them back to the live tissue, and then let them regrow. So we don't get them to bloom very often here, but they are fantastic where they do grow well. But every once in a while you'll see them, and you can still see them sometimes in the nurseries or around town. But they're breeding a lot of our native one, the smooth hydrangea. They're trying to breed a lot of the colors and the style into the smooth hydrangea. So that's something to look forward to in the future. Coming out of North Carolina, the university there is breeding a bunch of new ones that keep this same kind of lace cap flower, but with new reds and purples and blues, but a smooth hydrangea, which is easier and a lot easier for us to grow and to maintain, and a lot lower maintenance for us. This is Jesse Dahl again, and thank you all for listening to this class on hydrangeas, or this talk on hydrangeas. We wanted to share this with you in the spring in person. That didn't happen, but we're hoping that now that we can share this with you on the video, and it's also this time of year we actually have something to show you. We have the plants in bloom. So feel free to come out the Arboretum. We are now open dawn to dusk, and the outdoor bathrooms are available. Wear your mask to stay safe, and hope to see you soon.